Good afternoon, YouTube. It is I, Danielle, better known as Danielle, a happy medium. And in this video up for discussion today, and on the topic of crying, we're going to take a little bit of look at how we do communications and how they affect the sitter in front of us, how us as the medium may take on the emotions of the spirit and how we can deal with that, and why it's really important that we don't overlap too much when we're doing either communications in a sitting, in a private setting sort of way, or on that rostrum. Many people will have what we call crying episodes, or will cry when they are taking sittings. And this is sometimes really important when healing is taking place. And ultimately, sittings or anything on rostrum or churches, healing is an important part of, the communication. That's the whole purpose of we're doing mediumship, for healing. It's to continue to prove that life continues after death, that the loved ones still continue to watch over the loved ones here on the earth plane. And also because some people don't always get the closure that they're looking for. People maybe take a little bit sooner than when they're like, there's a lot of guilt there. There's a lot of, unresolved issues. Maybe there was some family drama, these types of things. So we have to take all of these things into consideration when we're doing any kind of communication for the spirit world. Now, what I do see quite a lot of, and one of the bad points I see with connections to sittings, or where mediums think they've done excellent reading if they've got the sitter crying. Now, me personally, I do not think that this promotes a good sitting. This is not what we should be aiming for when we're doing sittings, because ultimately we have a personal responsibility. We have a personal responsibility to the sitter, to the spirit world, and to ourselves, to make sure that we are not putting our sitter in a situation where they are uncontrollably upset. Because unfortunately what can happen, and what we don't know, is as the sitter leaves your house or leaves a church, they may go on to do something very unfortunate because of something we've said, something we've done, or because they've been in such a bad place after the sitting. That is not a good sitting. That is not what we're promoting when we're doing sitting work or church work. We have to always be mindful of what we're saying, how we're saying, and the way in which that it's given over. Now, if our client starts crying of their own accord, and because there's a healing link going on, then this is okay. But if we're going in with the intention of, we do a good sitting because we make the client cry, that's not right. That's not how we should be doing our sittings. If this happens because of the sitting, because of the emotion, the love, the experience in which they've had, which has been a very positive experience, then we have done something that is true, right, and accurate there. But if we're doing it just because we want to make the client cry, which I have seen, and it does go on within the industry, then we have to be personally responsible for what this client may or may not do after they leave your property or leave that church or whatever. And there is now a lot of, as much as I really don't like to talk about this, there is now people in the industry who are suing mediums, psychics, and ultimately are taking people to court because of the experiences or what this client has done after they've been for their sitting. Families become very upset because this loved one's then done something that they weren't going to do, and you can be accountable for that. So you have to be very careful when you're doing your sitting work, and making sure you stay within your ethics and within your personal responsibility. Now, that's just one of the bad sides to it, and we don't want to really look too much at that, but it has to be talked about because it's important that we talk about them things. But let's get back to the good stuff, because most sittings are done in the right way and are done really professionally. And the small minority far outweighs the good, because the good, there's far more good than there ever is bad. But when we're doing good sort of sittings or good church rostrum, a lot of healing is given, and that's really important when you're doing your communications, and making sure that it's right and it's accurate and it's relevant to the clientele. Now, when we look at you, the medium, so I wonder if I've got a bit of board space here. Let's just move around a little bit. So I don't know if you guys can see there. I'll move to this side. So we have you, who is the medium. And what the medium will do, or what the medium should do, is be as accurate as possible when you're doing your communications. Now, should we have the spirit world, which is here, and they're pressing upon your mind, remember they're always working with the mind there, bless them little hearts. What we can do and what can happen is if you're not completely comfortable with your energy, or you're not quite assured of what's yours and what's theirs, what can happen is the spirit world can push a little bit too much, which can then sort of flood your energy system, or flood your mind, or flood your emotions. Now, remember, they're not touching your energy field, because ultimately they're not interested in your psychic energy. But what they will press upon within your mind is your emotions, because your emotions are run by the mind. Now, what we have to understand here is because mediumship is all of the mind, we're always in control. So the best thing to do is if we feel as if there's been too much emotion put on, or we feel as if we're overwhelmed by, the emotion of this communicator, or the feeling of that communicator, and the love that's coming through, or the guilt, or the remorse of which that particular spirit feels, which does happen. It doesn't not happen. These things do happen. The best thing that you can do is say, step back. You're too close. Get back a little bit. I don't need you pressing upon my mind that closely. I don't need you pushing that on it. I know it's there. I feel it, and that's okay. I accept that, and I understand it. What they will automatically do is alter that, because the spirit world's good like that. They will alter that feeling so that it's not as heavy upon you. It's not as impressionable upon you. And as you speak it and give it off, it will become easier and more manageable for you to be able to then, keep moving with the particular clientele, or the particular communicator, or the particular conversation that's being had. Now, what we do need to talk about is after the sittings, or after the church work, and the stuff that we sometimes, because we all do communications that are sometimes a little bit upsetting. I'll tell you the story. When I first started doing communications, I did a lot of my stuff, because I'm spirit trained, as lots of you will probably know here on the channel. I used to do a lot of work over Facebook, used to do a lot of live readings and stuff like that. I don't do it now because it's not something that I place, but I have no problem or issue with them. And anyway, there was a particular girl, there was a big case. Now, I didn't know about this case. There was a big case in Wales where there was a young lassie who was taken. She was abducted from a playground, or a park, or that type of area where young children play, and she was abducted, and she was interfered with, she was molested, and these types of things. And unfortunately, we do have them communications. They do come through because they are there within the spiritual realms. And as this young girl come forward, she had long dark hair, and all her hair was like across her face. And she come forward in the way in which that she'd been taken. All her little clothes were ripped, and she was covered in blood and things like that, because they always come forward in the way in which that they went back to the spiritual world. It's not that they're that way now, but in order for my mind to understand it, in order for the communication to go over, they come forward. And I have to be honest, the emotion and the just the look of it was enough as a Buddha medium to put me really, really off. It did. It was quite nerve-wracking. It was quite shocking for me. And I'm very used to doing lots of different communications in all different ways. But this particular young girl come forward. She was taken across the live. She was evidence was taken and things. But for me personally, it was just too much. Now, for some of you who may know on here, I lost my son, and through losing my son, I do children very well. My son helps me an awful lot with them, but there's some of them I just can't do it as a medium, and I'm happy to express that, and I'm happy to say that. So because of the incident with the lovely little girl, and bless her little heart, she did get her mummy and all the rest of it, I went back to my spirit team and I said, look, I'm really, really sorry and all that, but I can't do them types of communications. It's too close for comfort for me. It's too much for me. It brings back some things as a human I'm yet to resolve, or I need to address. And through that, and saying that to my guides, I have never done a communication like that since, because it was just too traumatic for me as a medium. Now, people might look at me and go, well, you've been picky about what communicate is. It's not that. It was just the fact that I just couldn't deal with that as a human. I can't get my head around the fact that other people could harm something so precious. And so for me personally, it wasn't the type of communication that I wanted to do. So when we do these types of communications, you can be a little bit sort of not picky, but if it's too much, then go back to your spirit team and say, look, I'd prefer if I didn't do them types of communications. Lots of other different communicators out there, lots of different other ways of doing, communications. You don't have to do them particular communicators if you don't want to do them. And I have to be honest, I have never done a communication like that. So when we talk about when we leave sittings, some of them do sit with us, they stay with us for a long time. Why? Because it maybe touched personally upon something within our own life, or because it's just been so upsetting that we've sort of held on to that, or we thought about that a little bit more, or we've just sort of mold that communication. Or there'll be some, I'm sure some of you that are watching this video today, or whenever it is that you're watching it in the future, will be able to resonate. There'll have been one or two communicators that have just sort of stuck with you and thought, from some of the best that you've done with the greatest of evidence to some that's really sort of made you wobble a little, and it's part and parcel of doing mediumship. And what we have to understand when we're doing mediumship as well is that there will be some that will stay with us, and there will be some for all different types of reasons. How do you shut it off? How do you stop it? One of the reasons I've just given you there, I went back to my people and said, I can't do them, please don't bring them to me again, which they haven't. Or you can address the particular triggers in which that communicator has brought forward in order so that you can continue to grow and evolve and maybe look to do them types of communicators again. Again, that's your free will choice, and it's up to you as that medium there as well. Or what you have to learn to do is switch off. And as hard as that is, it can be very, very hard to switch off. So you're aware of it, but you don't look at it. So you're aware of that particular communicator or that communication that went on. You're aware of it, you've addressed it, you've looked at it, but then you don't go back at it. You sort of just be aware of it, but you sort of separate yourself from it. So I know I did that communication, I know how that made me feel, I am aware of them feelings, and I have that knowledge within inside of my mind. But then I will just sort of buffer it, you'll buff between it, so you'll just sort of leave it there and not look at it, but you'll always be aware of it, if that makes sense. So you're not sort of feeding into that communication all the time. And this probably goes down to people who don't always do good rostrum work, or sometimes don't always do private sittings and think, God, I could have done better, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. And that's again where you become aware of the fact that you maybe haven't done that communication to the best of its ability. You're aware of it, but you don't feed into it, so you sort of buff it. I'm aware, I know it's there, but I won't sort of feed into it, if that makes sense, because if you start feeding into it, then you start to feed in more and more negativity of I could have done better, I could have done better, I could have done better, and and that will sort of make you feel like less confident. It'll sort of make you feel a little bit down. So they're just some of the examples I can give you when we're doing connections to crying. Now, if our sitter is crying in the house with us and we're doing a private sitting, then make sure you accommodate them. Make sure that you find that compassion within your heart. You find that you give them hankies, you give that client some time, don't rush, even if you've got other clients. And I've done lots of private sittings over the last 5 years, and some have overlapped because of this. And, some people do get a little bit iffy jiffy, and they sort of, well, it's my time, and I paid for my time, and I've heard every bit and a bit more with connections to that. And all I have to say to my other clients is you have to accept and understand that this client's not in a good place, and if that makes your 10 minutes over, then you're 10 minutes over. But don't then rush that client afterwards in order to try and catch up. You just accept it for what it is. You're running late. There's nothing you can do about that. But your main priority is always making sure that this sitter is in a good place. Another example I can give you was I was in Belfast a fortnight ago doing a demonstration of mediumship, and there was a girl in the congregation who had recently lost her partner. And there was a message that come through, but it wasn't her partner. It was actually for the gentleman sat behind her, but it was very, very similar to her partner. And this lady was absolutely distraught. And I actually stopped the service, and I actually got down off the rostrum, and I went over to that lady and I stood with her for 5 to 10 minutes and just said, look, is everything all right? And I expressed to my congregation, could you give me 5 minutes? I'll make it up at the end. And they were quite happy to do that. People have walked out on rostrums because they've been so upset. And what you have to understand is that they are there, that these things are going to happen when you're working a rostrum. And when these things do happen, your moral compass has to come in there, your personal responsibility, not only for the person, but also for your congregation, the people who maybe are waiting, whatever it may be. If the Spirit's pushing on you too much, tell them to step back, get back. If you don't do them communications, you have that choice. You don't have to do them if you don't want to do them. If you just want to do your grandmas and granddads or your mums and dads, that's okay. There's lots of evidence in them if you're prepared to look for them, and that's fine and dandy. It's whatever it is, you as the medium. Remember, also always try to, grow from that spot, but, don't be pressurized into doing something that you don't want to do, because you don't need to do them. And especially if you're doing it for the razzle-dazzle, if you want to pull these different communicators because you're trying to prove a point. If you genuinely want to do different communicators, do them because you know that you can do them to the best of your ability. You can do them because it's important for the healing of the person in the room. Maybe because they don't always get to hear from that person. So look at why you maybe want to do different communicators. Look at why you are trying to stretch that mind, if that makes sense. If you're just doing it because you want to be a bit of a show off, then that's not the real good reason. Remember, communications is always about healing. And when we remember this, and when we understand that mediumship is healing, and that's the whole sole reason of why we do evidence and why we do communication. We talk about evidence so freely, and evidence is really important, as I talk about. But making sure that it's always about healing. Making sure it's always about the clientele. It's never about the medium. It's always about about them, sorry, my apologies. It's always about the clientele and making sure that they go away with the best possible sitting, church rostrum and healing from their loved ones in the spirit world. If you're doing mediumship because you want to make somebody cry, or because you're trying to razzle-dazzle somebody, or because you're just trying to be the big I am, then you've lost the reason as to why you want to do mediumship. And I hope that you'll understand that, these aren't the right reasons. This is the right reason. But when it comes to crying, making sure that the spirit world's not pushing too much upon you, all you've got to do is just ask them to step back a little bit. Tell them to sort of, just move it back a little. And they will do. And they always do what you ask of them. If you're still sort of feeding into some of the communications that you've done, then maybe some things are self-work that needs to be done there. I talk massively on this channel about self-development, natural development, and also spiritual development, which is the theory and mechanics behind the back way. Mechanics is theory of mediumship. And then obviously there's like the mediumship as well. It's important we have all three balanced. And when we have all three balanced, it makes for a good medium there. So in this video, we've talked on a few different topics, but solely it was about crying. Hopefully you've taken quite a bit of understanding from it. I'd love to hear your comments, feedback, anything in which that you maybe want me to look at. I am away in Ireland, so if you're watching this video, I'll now be in Ireland, and there'll be one going up on Monday as well. So hopefully you'll enjoy them videos, and I'll see you all next week when I'm finished. But for now, it's like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all very, very soon.